Hi everyone, this is BPD Gamer. I am back. I honestly am just going to be uploading a lot of really random videos. Some of you may know that I used to be Mormon. I am not. And a lot of people have asked me why I've left, and honestly it just comes down to the facts that I have found over the years of being LDS, and I have 35 points that I want to make that don't sit right with me. If you want to just go ahead and skip this if you are Mormon. I am not trying to bring down anybody's faith. This is just a reference to a reference that I can give to people who ask me, who are sincere, because I am not here to tear down anybody's faith. And so this is your last warning. If you're LDS or Mormon or a Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints member, it is up to you. Okay, so the first one that I know, I came when I was on my mission, I found. Let me grab it real quick. This is a copy of the first edition, Book of Mormon. They're 1970. So there are, I don't know if you could see that, but there are several versions of the Book of Mormon. The Book of Mormon is another testament of Jesus Christ. They also have 4 different ones, I believe. This is the newest one. And I was given it a couple of years ago. And I came across it, and I studied it word for word, and I started noticing that some of the scriptures were not the same that I had memorized from the other one. And so then I literally took it side by side and read each word, and there are tons of changes in doctrine. In the first Book of Mormon I showed you, the brown one, it talks about how there's a Trinity, how they are one. It literally is different. So that was the biggest thing that started getting me to question things. Number 2, the DNA analysis of the Native Americans. If you look at some of the maps and things like that scholars have done, it doesn't add up. Number 3, there are things in the Book of Mormon that did not exist yet due to how the earth was at the time. Horses, chariots, goats, elephants, steel, those didn't exist at that time. Number 4, so in the Book of Mormon, you have Lehi and his family come over from the Americas, and you have the Nephites and the Lamanites. The Lamanites are cursed with a dark skin, and they both go to war with each other, and the Nephites end up becoming delightsome, and so their skin is still white. And then the Lamanites are darkened with a black skin. And towards the end of it, the Nephites are even more wicked than the Lamanites. And they have this huge war. And so I think this is the 4th point. Yeah, the 4th point on my list here is that where's all the evidence of dead weapon? Like, where's all the people? Like, we have found smaller archaeological facts of like the Mayans and like Aztecs and shits like that. So where's all these millions and millions and billions of bodies? You know, it doesn't make sense. All right, number 5. So looking at the Book of Mormon places that the church provides and reading it and studying it, I did this on my mission where I put all of the names of where it describes where it would be. And then I laid it up next to a New York map, and they're all very similar. Like, they almost sound all the same. Like the lakes, the towns, the mountains. Very interesting. Number 6. So the Book of Mormon is kind of like 4 books in one. It's very similar to a book called The View of Hebrews. It was in 1842, I believe. Maybe even older. The first book of Napoleon, and another book called The Late War, and then the Old Testament, the King James Version, by William Tyndale. So all of those together are very similar. I recommend you look that up. Number 7, like I mentioned before, in the 1830 edition of the Book of Mormon, it had a Trinity look. It literally says that they are one. They are a Trinity, a God, not 3 separate beings. Okay, so now this brings me to my next point. I went to Salt Lake City, and I looked up the archive records at the libraries. There, I found at least 4 different versions of Joseph Smith's account. And so that doesn't sit well either. It's like, if they are all separate, then why are some of them with Jesus? Why are there just God? Why is there none Jesus? And it doesn't talk about Satan attacking him anywhere in those, ever. In his own handwriting, you can go look. Okay, so number 9, the Book of Abraham, the papyrus, was taken to scholars, and it doesn't mean what it actually means. Number 10, Joseph married 34 women. That was forbidden in the Doctrine and Covenants, which was a book of scripture that he brought out at the time. 11 were already married, 10 were teenagers, some were as young as 14, and some of them were his foster daughters. Now, I've always been a little skeptical about this. I've heard this a lot on my mission, and I didn't believe it. But, actually researching pretty deep, I did come across some names. I did come across documentation of it, and you can look it up on LDS.org. I don't know how long it's going to be there for, but Mormon or Ancestry.com also, the facts don't lie. Awkward. Okay, number 11. So part of me wondered how Joseph Smith was able to do this. He lied to women, forcing them, saying, you'll be damned to hell if you don't be with me. Or I promise you eternal life if you come with the prophet. Or, I'm under damnation of a flaming angel with a sword. So I've always been a little skeptical about this. I thought I would throw it in there. But, I always would like to think that he wasn't having sex with them, but I think he was. Back in the days, women could not own land, and a lot of those men, when they went to war and things like that, would die. Mormons were also very hated. So I would like to think of him as marrying a bunch of these women to help them keep their land and their families and shiz like that. But a lot of the men didn't even know. So that's what disturbs me. Okay, number 12. So Gordon B. Hinckley, when I was in elementary school, was the prophet. That's when I started first learning about him. Gordon B. Hinckley said that polygamy is not doctrinal. I remember him saying that. You can look it up on LDS.org. You got to go search for these things, though. Like I said, if you're sincerely interested, I'm not here to give you all the answers. I'm just telling you what I came across. Now, Brigham Young taught that it was essential for exaltation, and several other ones in those old conference talks that you can bring up. And that is a contradiction among prophets, Okay, number 13. Joseph Smith married Fanny Alger before the sealing power was even taught or revelation on polygamy. So he was already cheating. Number 14. The Adam God theory was taught by Brigham Young in conference and in the temple endowment ceremony. And now they did away with it. I always thought it was like some deep doctrine, but I actually came across it. And yeah, it was taught. And I've talked to older members of Mormonism, the LDS Church, whatever you want to call it, and they have their grandparents, like journals talking about it. Interesting. Okay, number 15. Brigham Young taught blood atonement, which led about 100 pioneers becoming murdered by church leaders in the Mountain Meadow Massacre. So, blood atonement is really messed up. I'll get to that in a little bit. I hope I remember. But the blood massacre, Mountain Meadow Massacre, was horrible. If you don't know what it is, go look it up. Number 16. Blacks were given no authority for priesthood. All the way from Brigham Young to Spencer W. Kimball. I've heard that Joseph Smith gave priesthood to some, but I was never able to find information on that, so I can't say it. Number 17. In 1980, the church paid $1,000. Oh, this is interesting. In 1980, the church paid $900,000 to suppress church history, embarrassing documentation, not knowing that they were fake. So there is no gift of prophecy. They had no idea, and they tried to come out with explanations for it. And then they realized later that it was fake, and that the guy that was faking these documents was actually a murderer and went to jail. Oops, no gift of discernment there. Also adding to that, there are people who bring in cameras into the temples. So where's your gift of discernment at that point? Doesn't exist. Also, knowing when people are lying to you during a interview or something doesn't exist. I'm sorry. Okay. Number 18, Joseph Smith translated what are called the Kinderhook plates, claiming they were from Ham in the Old Testament. Now, if you don't know what the Kinderhook plates are, they're something that is not taught and most likely will be denied. They were these little, like, bell-shaped plates, and I don't think he actually was able to finish all of them. But I remember coming across a documentation that a scholar brought like printed copies of them to Brigham Young University in Provo, Utah, and claimed that they were fake. It was later shown as fake. You can go look that up too. It's interesting. Number 19. Joseph and Oliver did not tell the people about the priesthood restoration until years after, and changing older revelations to match. See, they're going along with the Book of Mormon and the priesthood revelation is there's a time where if you look at the timeline, if you take all this information and look at the dates and you match it up on the timeline, it doesn't make sense. The Book of Mormon has been changed, like I mentioned, hundreds of times. Joseph Smith's revelations were changed over time, and then finally the Book of Mormon came out, that first one that I have, and it was continued to change over time. So it just goes to show that it's inconsistent and it doesn't make sense. Okay. Number 20, Joseph was hired to use seer stones. He was taken to court and he was tried for fraud because he would tell people where to find buried treasure. Very similar to how the Book of Mormon was supposedly translated. Okay, so number 21. The Book of Mormon witnesses were related to the Smiths or Whitmers except for Martin Harris. So every single one of them that claimed to see them were all pretty much related. It seems like an easy way to cover shiz up. And I'm pretty sure that they didn't sign their own signatures. I'm pretty sure Oliver Cowdery was the only one that signed his own and then put everybody else's down as a witness. Don't quote me on that, though. Let's see. Okay, number 22. Lewion. Okay, sorry. Okay, so number 22, Joseph did not use the plates to translate. Okay, so here's something interesting. Growing up, a lot of them talked about how, you see these pictures of Joseph looking at the book. That's not how it is. And the church later confirmed this. But there's always this thought that he used them, these old plates that were sketched in by old prophets of the Book of Mormon times and carried around by Moroni. He used the seer stone. He would put them inside a hat. I know it sounds nuts, but he would put them inside a hat, put his face up to the hat, and look inside and tell his scribes what to write. So then there were pages that were taken home, I think, by one of the scribes. I can't remember if it was Oliver or Caldry or whoever it was. Martin Harris. I can't remember. It was one of the two. But they held the papers, and then he couldn't retranslate. And so he claimed that he had angered God. I think it's because he was making it up, personally. So the book of Lehi was lost, and so in the beginning of the Book of Mormon, it's the book of Nephi. Okay, number 23. Okay, so this is interesting. Most people don't know this, but Joseph Smith was a Mason. So the temple endowment was revealed 7 weeks after he rose in the Masonic ceremonies, and the handshakes that they do there that are done inside the temple and during there are very identical. Number 24. The endowment was supposed to be eternal, yet blood oaths and other things were changed in the 1980s. Now, if you don't remember me saying a little bit before, I said I'd get back to blood oaths. So what a blood oath was that you would slit your own throat and stab your chest or stomach if you disclosed any of the sacred information that you learn in there. And I'm not disclosing any sacred information. I won't do that. Sorry. So you can research that all on your own, but I'm not here to do that. I'm not here to tear down people's faith. Number 25, Joseph said things that never came to pass. According to Deuteronomy chapter 18, this would disqualify him as a prophet. Number 26, the Old Testament condoned slave, rape, genocide, and racism. Number 27, the church removes stuff and covers crap up all the time, including rape. You can look at the Joseph Bishop case. It's very sad. Number 28, Joseph made an illegal bank in Kirtland to raise money because they were in debt from printing the Book of Mormon and who knows what else. And so when he was caught, he fled on his horse up to Canada and left the members there to deal with whatever happened. Kind of a jerk move. Number 29, no paid ministry. That's a lie. I've seen documentation of Henry B. Eyring's pay stub. He definitely gets paid for what he does, and they have insurance. And I know it's the same insurance that the church gives because I know what insurance they do. Number 30, the church spent $1.5 billion on a mall. That's more than humanitarian work that they've done in almost 20 years if you look at the statistics of what they put out publicly. If they don't update it, then I could be wrong on that one. But I do know for a fact that makes them hypocrites because there are restaurants in there that serve alcohol and they allow it to be in there and they tell people the word of wisdom, don't drink alcohol. So therefore, you're making money off alcohol. So good job, hypocrites. Okay, so 31, the early church taught that 10% of surplus for tithing. Now it's 10% of your income even if you don't have enough to pay your bills. They claim that if you pay your bills, that good will come. And I've tested this. I can say I've had miracles happen. And I've said I've been screwed over before for doing that. Number 32. The name has changed a few times from the Church of Latter-day Saints to the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and then a few other ones. Now, there's a scripture in the Bible that talks about how for it to be a true church, I'll talk about this maybe later. Maybe, I don't know, I'm still deciding. It talks about how there needs to be the name of Christ in it. So if they do believe that the Book of Mormon and the Bible match up, then it should have already been the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, not the Church of Latter-day Saints. Okay. Number 33, church leaders can't lead astray, but by obvious mistakes of old prophets. That's kind of laughable. They have led them astray. They are human and they do make mistakes. So therefore, they're not perfect. So therefore, I don't trust them. Number 34. So 6 members in 1993 were excommunicated who were scholars. Boyd K. Packer taught that it needs to be faith promoting. They put out their opinions and they all got excommunicated for it. Then the last one, number 35, Dallin H. Oaks said, don't criticize church leaders even if it's true. Well, there you go. So I have now given you a 20-minute video of why the facts that I have found over the years from being a missionary, growing up LDS, and loving every minute of it, to a lot more personal reasons that I probably won't go into detail. But I'll say one last thing, that it is not a plan of happiness that they teach, because I cannot be with my kids in that religion because of their doctrine. Now, when I say that, it's a little bit more complex and it's very personal, but I feel like that it's bogus. I'm sorry. You know, I don't know. It's got a lot of really good things in it. Personally, I don't feel like anyone needs religion to be a good person. And I feel like the members, not all, some are just very hypocritical. I feel like they're very judgmental and less loving than they should be. And I feel like I'm a better person not being religious, but being spiritual. So I appreciate you guys tuning in today. Hopefully this wasn't too boring, and hopefully you stuck around. I hope that my warning at the beginning was enough. I hope that this doesn't pull anybody away from their faith. I love you guys, and I appreciate it. And I'll see you guys next time. Thanks.